In this video, I talk about how we got fat and sick. How did we get so sick and fat? All right, so we get into how we got here, how did we get here? And then who's responsible? Who's responsible for this mess? And then are they willing to clean up? Are they willing to clean up this mess? And then don't let the boondoggles affect you. How to not let all this noise pretty much get in the way of you making progress. And then some action items. I end the video off with some things you can take action on right after watching the video to start making better dietary decisions, decisions that will make you a little bit more healthier, more fit. All right, so how did we get here? Government or nutritionists? The government has been telling people what to eat, here in the US at least, for a very long time. And most relevant to this video is how they started approaching this in the 1900s. The leading causes of death at the time were infectious diseases like tuberculosis, which were made very worse. Like it was pretty much 10x because of nutrient deficiencies, especially among the poor. The push to eat more. So life expectancy during that period was around 47 years old for both sexes. And advice that came down from federal nutrition experts was to eat a variety of different kinds of food. Eat more of whatever you can get your hands on, was what it turned into pretty much. The effects of 20th century prosperity on health. So during the same period, the US economy improved exponentially. So did housing, sanitation, and nutrition. Nutritional deficiencies declined and life expectancy shot up to 77 years old. Today, the 20th century problem has been flipped on its head. The leading causes of death are chronic diseases associated with the excessive intake of food, heart disease, diabetes, strokes, and so on. A cluster of diseases also known as metabolic syndrome. Dietary recommendations, the sad truth. However, even with a clear knowledge of the solution, eating less of processed, ultra-processed junk food, the government is very averse to putting out that information because it will annoy food producers. That's the sad truth. Nutritional advice coming down from the United States Department of Agriculture has always been more concerned with pleasing food producers with very little consideration for public health. Who's in charge of this mess? The creation of the United States Department of Agriculture, or also known as USDA, was to ensure efficient and reliable supply of food and also to be a source of useful information connected to agriculture and food consumption. I wish they just stuck to making sure that there's enough food for the people, because they've done a very good job at that, Regardless of what we think is in the food right now, food is ubiquitous, compared to what was going on in, say, the 1900s. Take a walk down your street and there's countless number of restaurants. You can have Italian food, Chinese food, Indian food, all in one day. Hell, you can have that in one meal if you want. There's food everywhere. Food is, they've done a very good job to make sure that there's a lot of food. We can debate on the methods used and the things that they have in the food and just how messy it's become. But there is a lot of food. Like if the goal was to just make sure we don't have to worry about food, they did it. They have done a very good job of that. But clearly, they have no idea what they're doing with dietary recommendations. Or at least they know what they're doing and they're just doing this nefarious, very slimy and dirty stuff, Telling people to eat things that are clearly not good for them. All right, the blind spot of good intentions. It started out very well intentioned, like anything, In 1890, Wilbur Olin Atwater. This gentleman here, Wilbur Olin Atwater. Zoom in. This guy, he was the first director of research activity with the USDA, a very famous chemist known for his studies of human nutrition. He listed the contents of calories, protein, carbs, fat, and even minerals found in common American foods. He also put out information on different caloric requirements for different levels of work, and also the role of specific food in the diet. This led to the first ever official dietary recommendation by the USDA, a 14-page pamphlet titled How to Select Foods. It organized food sources of nutrients into 5 categories: fruits and vegetables, meats and other protein-rich foods, cereal and starchy foods, and sweets and fatty foods. At the time, food producers felt no threat to their existence, and they actually loved the fact that minerals were isolated, right? Essential minerals found in common foods had been isolated, and they thought it could be a very good marketing message. They saw potential in the fact that saying the foods that they're putting on the shelves have these minerals, right? It's a good marketing message. This was probably the best it's ever gotten with food recommendations. And if they stopped right there, I think it would have done a whole lot of people a whole lot of good. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And there's been so many inconsistencies of these food groups, and they pretty much change at a whim. Conflicts with special interest groups. In 1950, the USDA invited members of the food industry to help review preliminary drafts of dietary recommendations. This was in an effort to be on the same page, right? Which it doesn't make any sense to me. Clearly, they were looking at interest groups and trying to make sure that whatever it is they're about to put out made everybody happy, which is a twisted way of going about it, right? If your job is to look for truth, you're looking for the truth, find the truth and put it out there. At least if you're looking out for the public, if you're looking out for public health, find out what the truth is and put it out there without worrying about who you piss off. At least if that's what you're getting paid to do. It's your job to look out for the consumer, right? So put it out there regardless of what anyone feels about it, because it's the truth. It's been decades, it's been years now, and food producers continue to support USDA's efforts to promote consumption of more and more food, even when we clearly know that there's a problem right now. And of course, they're going to do that. More food in your stomach means more profits on their bottom line. Are they willing to clean up the mess? Are they? Nip the opposition in the bud. Whenever federal government experts, usually newbies, were courageous enough to oppose the big dogs, to promote eating less, they were pretty much put out of business, or they were never re-elected or fired. Senator George McGovern, this guy here, he was one of the first federal officials to be courageous enough to educate the consumer on the link between chronic disease and too much food. He wasn't re-elected, even when he tried to realign with Big Food's narrative, when he said, on the whole, McDonald's and other such foods were a nutrition addition to a balanced diet. It was too late, right? He started a fight he couldn't win, and he was out. Fighting the science. The American Society for Clinical Nutrition and also the American Heart Association, at a time when they meant something, they all found links between too much food and chronic disease. Healthy People, a publication intended to look out for public health, was also very courageous enough to put out this narrative. The meat industry did not like this and actually put Healthy People out of business. This was the last publication to ever advocate for eating less in those days. The toothpaste is out of the tube. The fact that Americans need to start eating less, it's been clear ever since the connection was made between chronic disease and too much food. And anybody that's truly trying to help the public knows this. Anything contrary to this is spinning the truth, making sure not to piss off Big Food. And who is Big Food? I made a video about this not too long ago. I'll link it somewhere here. And because it's kind of like when you say Big Food, it's kind of like when you talk about, I don't know, the deep state or something like that. But it's clear who these people are. It's an industry, there's different types of businesses in there. And I go into some details on it in the video that I'll link somewhere here. Who let the big bad wolves in? Who did? So in 1980, the USDA pretty much opened the door for the big bad wolf to pretty much walk in and tear everything up. Senator John Block, all right, John. This gentleman here, This is Senator John Black, all right? He was a former hog farmer, and then he was elected as the secretary of the USDA. Multiple high-level positions in the USDA were filled by former directors of the American Meat Institute and lobbyists for the National Cattlemen's Association, whose goal is, right, the National Cattlemen's Association, so works to advance the economic, political, and social interests of the U.S. cattle business and to be an advocate for the cattle industry's policy positions and economic interests. That's what it says on their website here, right? National Cattlemen's Beef Association. I don't know about you, but I didn't see anything in there that says to care about the consumer, right? It's these guys are looking out for beef producers. But anyway, these are the people that were holding very high level positions in the USDA. Pretty much the people that are supposed to be regulated are now the people that were making the regulations. Senator Black's first act was to get rid of the USDA's Human Nutrition Center. This was a small unit that promoted the interests of the consumer rather than the producers. That, of course, has been a huge disaster. Once power is given up, it's damn near impossible to get it back. And this chronic business of people that are working with the food industry getting into positions of making regulations has just gotten worse. This is also called the revolving door in politics, a situation where officials move between roles as legislators and regulators in the public sector, and then they turn around and become employees or the lobbyists of those industries that they were regulating in the private sector, right? So it's like, yeah, while you're working for the public sector, if you do me this favor, I got you. Like once you're done working there, or if you feel like you're not appreciated over there, I got this huge position for you and you'll be making so and so amount of money and you're set for life. So it's like, what do you think? That smells like a conflict of interest. It stinks, really. Don't let the boondoggles affect you. Taking responsibility. So, is the push to eat less ever going to make it? Even in today's climate, I have hope. It's the only choice there is. Otherwise, we're committing suicide by overeating, right? The moral of this story is that we're on our own when it comes to deciphering what's actually good for us to eat. As it stands right now, dietary recommendations are always going to be controversial. There's no government agency that's willing to fund the promotion of helpful dietary recommendations. And it's a shame. They're not willing to compete with the food industry's advertising budget. And really, they just don't want to get on their bad side because a lot of people have, that's their retirement, if you ask me, for a lot of these people. Good intentions are few and far between, and it's impossible to fight the problem at the source. What we're doing right now is kind of like we're trying to mop the bathroom floor while the faucet is still running. Good luck, We know what we need to do. We need to turn this thing off. But they're not going to let that happen without a fight. And they know how to fight. And there's so many people that want it to stay that way. There's so many people that benefit from it. Financially, mostly. Overcoming Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome, right? If you don't know what it is, it's when a victim develops positive feelings towards their abuser, pretty much, and even identifies with their goal. Like they're fine with whatever this person is doing, even if they're harming them. And we need to overcome that because that's what's going on, right? Currently, the public relies on the media and the public relations efforts of food producers for reliable information on nutrition. Clearly, public health is not their priority. The prescription for being healthier is pretty simple, actually. Maybe that's why we overlook it. It's obvious. Eat less of the ultra-processed food, right? If the food is in a package and there's a label for you to read what's in there, you might not want to eat that. And if you're wrestling with it, I understand, right? It's an addiction problem. Most of this food is created to keep you addicted. That's how you go back for it. But if you cannot pronounce the thing that's on the food label, you should stay away from it, right? Eat something that when you look at it, you know it's food. Fruits, vegetables, meats, things that are food and you know what it is, instead of deciphering terms and all kinds of scientific jargon before you decide if you want to eat it or not. And the truth is that nobody's even reading these labels because we're just so hooked on this stuff and we just want the fix. So I get it, you know, I think changing dietary habits is kind of like fighting an addiction. You know, you need to approach it with an addiction mindset, and you are going to have way more success looking at it like that, because that's what it is, really. More especially if you grew up on this, if you're unfortunate enough to grow up in this society which has fed you rubbish pretty much and called it food, and now you're hooked on it. It's gonna be a fight. It's not impossible, but but it's gonna take you being willing to recognize what it is. You know, when somebody tells you 95% of the grocery store is trash, it's like, whoa. If you're not in the produce section, you're most likely in very dangerous territory. Anyway, it's obvious. Eat less of the ultra processed stuff. Eliminate it as soon as possible, right? Stick to grandma's advice, right? Eat fruits, vegetables, home cooked meals, That's it. It doesn't get any easier than that. If you cannot pronounce the words that are on a food label, you need to think twice before putting it in your body. And if you don't read the food label, start reading it. I know the majority of people don't read the food labels. We think it's in the store. For you to be in the store, for you to make it into the store, of course, there's got to be regulations to look out for the consumer, right? No, there's none. You gotta start looking at the food labels and just be very paranoid, right? The paranoid survive, right? Be very worried about what's in these foods, and just start being more aware by reading the thing before just feeding it to your kids, Think twice. Whenever it gets more complicated than eating whole foods, again, somebody's spinning the truth. People pleasing and sound bites. So nutrition advice would be more objective if it was solely based on scientific knowledge. But as we know, research studies are subject to interpretation. When it's all said and done, any dietary guideline that makes it out is rarely the whole truth. They're simultaneously trying to keep the scientific facts somewhat, while at the same time trying to make the food producers happy. Not possible. It's a very binary thing here. It's like if soda is bad, it's bad, right? Stay away from it. What happens is that by the time it gets to the consumer, this dietary advice, it's this washed up thing that's condensed down into a catchy soundbite. It's meaningless pretty much by the time it gets to you. The 20th century soundbite was eat more, right? Remember? Nutrient deficiencies, eat more food. It helped deal with all kinds of nutritional deficiencies. But it also gave rise to big food, giving a select elite lots of wealth and influence. Currently, federal health agencies are concerned about chronic diseases, another unintended consequence of eating more. If we're still going by sound bites, today's should be eat less, right? Only problem is this kind of talk is not getting the green light from the powers that be. This is going to take an individual effort. The whole truth is out there for anyone that's looking, Thank God you fell upon this video. Very good start. Vote with your dollar. The fact is that advice to eat less reduces the profits of food producers. That's just the fact. And they're fighting it with everything they've got. Like I mentioned in the last video, we still hold the power, right? These people are out to make money. So if you stop buying what they're selling right now, if you stop buying the junk, well, they're going to have to look into it and try to figure out why you're not buying this. They will find out what you want, which is healthier food, right? These people are businessmen, and they're gonna provide whatever it is that's making them money. So are you willing and ready to look at junk food for what it really is, right? Poison. Maybe not today, and that's fine. I know it's not easy, but if you wanna be better, you have to demand it. The supply, it will follow. That's economics right there. All right, some action items. First, education is a big one. Educate yourself about the food supply. Why is this stuff cheap? Where is it coming from? What is it I'm putting in my body? I don't care if you go to like a famous doctor with all kinds of PhDs. What they're going to tell you is, again, grandma's advice, right? You got to sleep, eat real food, okay? Move, exercise. The explanations are like these crazy soliloquies that go on and on. You can get a PhD in this stuff, but the prescription is pretty simple, right? Eat real food, rest, relax, manage your stress. It's very easy stuff. So just educate yourself about just the basics of it. And I like to make videos and talk about stuff like this. It helps me, stay accountable. So you're in the right place, you're in good company. But then there's a whole bunch of people too that, it's YouTube. There's so many resources on what's actually going on with our food industry. Why the hell is it so hard to get good food out here? Start asking those questions. What's going on in these supermarkets? Why do I always have to run through a freaking barrage of baked goods, donuts, cakes, and cookies before I can get to the watermelons? By the time you hit the watermelons, if you're lucky enough, you're craving all this other stuff. So just kind of educate yourself about the food supply, how you're getting this food, the ingredients that are in them. Start reading food labels and just get to know what it is what's actually going on. And then you want to become a government and science skeptic, right? Science it's not this all-knowing perfect thing that we need to put our faith in, right? It's not God. The government too, they're not looking out for you if you think they are. Government positions are held by people just like you, who once they go home and take off their, name tags, they take the suits off, they're just another dude in the house, a dad or a mom trying to just pay their mortgage, and they're always looking out for the interest first. Okay, so just have that mindset. And of course there's a whole lot of good people in these positions, but as we've seen, there's a bunch of bad ones, and those are the ones that are affecting everybody. Science too, to do all this sciencing that's going on in these labs, it's like somebody's got to pay for that. It's not free. It's not a free ride. And usually the people that are willing to pay for these things are the people that have the money. The biggest donors to some of breakthrough scientific findings on food are junk food producers. So they have that first dibs to kind of twist and bend the truth before it gets to you. They paid for the thing. And then do what's called a pantry purge. There's a good book by Mark Sisson. It's called The Primal Blueprint. This book here, this is a very good book, and he kind of simplifies everything you need to do into like a list of 10 things you got to do. Check it out. And there's what he calls a pantry purge, right? All the things you think you need to be stocking up in your house, most of them are junk, and you want to think of your house like a sacred place, right? It's a place where you spend most of your time. You have your kids in there, you have friends and family. You want the best ingredients in your home because, think of it like a sanctuary where you come to relax. So if you have things that have, high fructose corn syrup, seed oils, all these kinds of inflammatory ingredients, additives, preservatives, get it out of there, right? Do what's called a pantry purge. If you feel like, hey, you think you're wasting food, find a place you can donate it, but if it were me, I would throw it in the junk because I don't think anybody should be eating this food, period. So go out, or everything that's sugar laden, throw it out. Processed flour, all that, take it out, and then fill it in with healthy options, fruits, vegetables, all kinds of good stuff for you. Fill your freezer with good quality meats and fish. It's a very powerful thing, the pantry purge, because if you have a bag of chips in the pantry, it's not a question of whether or not you're gonna eat that thing. It's more of when you're gonna eat it. So the best you can do is to purge, get rid of all the nasty, fill it in with good stuff, and just, you spend most of your time in this space. You want the best quality stuff in your house. And then lastly, just, vote with your dollar. Right? If you're not paying for these things, they're not going to be on your shelf, period. They only put it out there because they know somebody's going to pay for it. So the best thing you can do is support people that are making good quality stuff. There's good places like Thrive Market, right? They have, if you still want to be snacking, there's websites like this, Thrive Market. They have good ingredients, good quality snacks, all kinds of stuff. I look at this place, it's kind of like Amazon, but just healthy stuff, right? And it's not just food. They have good, fluoride free toothpaste, or like beef sticks without all the nasty stuff, and this is just one of many. Support people that are making good quality stuff and stop paying for trash. Stop paying to ingest poison, pretty much. So if they see that you're not wanting this stuff, they pivot, you know, they transition to putting more of what people want to eat. And it might seem like one person doesn't count, or you think, you know, you're doomed to failure and you cannot change. It is difficult, but it just takes you taking that first step, right? If you do this for, you know, 1-2 weeks and you start getting the results, you start feeling great. You wake up in the morning feeling well rested. You eat good quality breakfast. You don't want to go back to the old way of doing things, right? So vote with your dollar. Start buying more good quality ingredients and pretty much get rid of all the bad. Stop paying to get poison. And then lastly, join the Grace for Fatherhood group. We exchange ideas. It's uncensored, and you'll be the first to know when I post videos like this in there. And with that being said, thank you very much for spending your time with me. I will see you on the next one.